Doc Sports presents. Football Release Party Live Event Thursday, September 11th.
Yo, welcome to the Football Release Party here at Doc Sports. I'm your host, as always, Robert Ferringo. Thank you very much for taking some time out of your day. It is now 6:01 p.m. Eastern Time. That means that at Doc Sports, all the football picks are live, people. This is not a drill. These are live plays that are coming at you. In 4 minutes, they'll be in your inbox, but you can log in at Doc Sports right now, get your plays, and get ready for action on the weekend. We have NFL game kicking off in 2 hours. We have one college football game. A little weird that there's not more Thursday college action this early in the season, but we're ready to go, and I'm ready to go. First, I'm going to apologize, though. This is the second week in a row that I have had absolutely zero time to prepare for this show, right? Like most television shows, productions, things like this that you see, there's production meetings, guys are discussing questions, what are we going to talk about, topics, all this. You're getting none of that, okay? All of my time, every single second of the last 24 hours has gone into developing my picks, doing my research. So, I mean, I guess I'm prepared for this show, but what I'm saying here is that you're getting the real deal from me and the Handicappers that I have coming on. Arun Shiva is going to be up next. We have Vernon Croy, Scott Spreitzer, Griffin Murphy. So none of this is scripted. We have not talked about any of this, discussed even what we're going to be chatting about tonight. So you're getting the real deal here from Doc Sports. Okay, over in the chat, if you guys have questions, comments, you want us to talk about games, here's your chance. You have some of the top professional sports handicappers on the planet here at your beck and call for 1 hour. So anything that you want to know, don't be shy, people. Welcome to Cameron Chapman and Antonio Johnson, new members. Welcome to the party. Also, people, go down in the description. Take advantage of that free 60 link. That's $60, same as cash, to be used at Doc Sports. Now, our top games, which are located in the BPA, they're posted and advertised in the BPA, the big play alert right now. Those cost $30 a piece. So we're basically giving you 2 free big plays. And not for nothing, but yes, I have my 8-unit NFL game of the year going on Sunday. Okay, this is the earliest in the season that I've ever had an NFL game of the year. Again, that's part of the reason why I was so, what's up, Norman? Part of the reason why I'm so like haggard and fired up right now is that over the last hour I'm debating. I'm like, do I make this a game of the year? Do I just keep it as a 7-unit play? I like it. How much? Blah, blah, blah. These are the decisions that we have to make as handicappers. Also, like and subscribe to Doc Sports YouTube channel. If you enjoy this show and enjoy what you hear over the next hour, like and subscribe. We have free play videos. We have analysis videos. We have some of the top minds in the industry on our Doc Sports YouTube channel. Very valuable information that's coming at you every single day. Ton of free plays, promos. Just like and subscribe. Turn those alerts on. Also, don't forget about Doc's Premium. Okay, this is a free service that I am bringing to you right now. Less than free, actually. I just gave you $60, right? So, like, I'm paying you to be here, basically. But become a premium member. We have 3 different tiers of that, all that good stuff. Okay, first question is from Evan. My line for Green Bay and Redskins line is 4. Well, first of all, they're not the Redskins anymore, but I see where you're coming from. Is 4 and 59? 59 is not right. I think you mean 49. Okay. I like Green Bay just this little tiny bit much. I am basing this on 2 things. Number one, the Redskins played well and looked dominant last week, but that was against the Giants, who are one of the 3 worst teams in the league. Green Bay played well and looked dominant last week against the Lions, probably one of the top 10 teams in the league. So that's one. Home field advantage on a short week, I tend to lean into. And number 3, I came into the season expecting a regression from Washington. A lot of their metrics last year were unsustainable coming into this season. So this is a Washington Washington team that, while very good, I'm expecting to take a step back. That's more of a macro level handicapping thing that's not specific to this one game. But I'm like, look, I came into the season saying I was going to bet against Washington. I'm betting against Washington. The totals last week, the under went 13-3. I did a lot of digging to see how these Thursday night games have done in week 2. It's pretty much 50-50 over the last 13 years. Yeah, I'm a weirdo like that. That's what I spend my time doing, is going back since 2012 and looking at over-unders from the Thursday night game in week 2. So no real angle there, but I thought both defenses played well last week, so I'm going to kind of lean in on that. So, all right, without further ado, let me bring in my first guest, and that's the one, the only, the Indian Cowboy. Arun, how we doing, brother?
Good, man.
Excited? Looking forward to this weekend or what?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I'm glad to see Alabama get back, and all the Alabama podcasts I listened to, all hell was breaking loose,
Right. Oh, they're back. Beating Louisiana Monroe means that they're back.
Well, don't forget, Saban lost to Louisiana Monroe. So, it was one of those things. It was like full circle. It's like, maybe Louisiana Monroe is like the golden hawk. It's like the Native American sign. That's like the rain sign. That means that we're about to take off again. So we'll see. That Wisconsin game should be interesting. Public's on Wisconsin, but Wisconsin has revenge. So I stayed away from that game. But yeah, how are you doing?
Thoughts on that game, though? Like, I know that's on your radar because you are an Alabama fan. Now, I know Alabama went to Madison and beat them 42-10 last year, right? It takes more than, a handshake and a smile to get a blowout win in Madison. I don't know yet, and I don't think anyone knows yet if Alabama is necessarily better this year, but I don't think Wisconsin's better, right? Like, they have not shown me anything. They were only up 10-0 going into the fourth quarter against Miami of Ohio. They were only up 14-10 last week at halftime against Middle Tennessee. This Wisconsin is not Brett Bielema's Wisconsin. So, all things being equal, if Alabama's as good as they were last year, if Wisconsin's about as good as they were last year, you think this game coming to Tuscaloosa and a little bit of desperation, that should be blowout city for the Crimson Tide, right?
It should. And I made a mistake when we last talked because I forgot Gus Malzahn as the offensive coordinator over at FSU. If I had remembered that, I might have made FSU an 8-star play.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about this. Like, during the summer, I loved Florida State. I was like, no way. Like, that's too many points, true road game, all of this stuff. But then when Nick Castellano started running his mouth, talking about how Saban's not there to have, I'm like, Alabama's going to kill him. Like, they're going to destroy them. So
that's one of the reasons why I kind of laid off that too. But no, as far as the game, Wisconsin, Alabama, I think it's probably going to go under. I'm staying away from the side. I think the only way Wisconsin keeps it close is through their defense. I don't think Alabama it's been forever since Alabama put up 70+ points in a game. So I don't think that's going to happen either. I think it's going to be, you're going to have Coach Fickell who puts together basically almost like a half-court offense, basically just run, keep them off the field. And I think that's why that total sits at 46. So if I had to pick something, I'm staying away from the game, but if I had to pick something, it would be the under.
Okay. That's the one thing I worry about, and that's what I was going to ask you about, is that they lost to Florida State because Florida State ran it down their throat, plain and simple. Wisconsin, after 2 failed years under Fickell of trying to modernize the offense and go to a little bit more of a spread option, pass happy type of thing, they're trying to get back to like old school Wisconsin football running the ball. They don't have the horses that they used to, but are you a little bit concerned that Wisconsin will be able to run the ball, control the clock, leaning in on that under, and that could make it so that Alabama doesn't cover the spread?
Well, it's interesting because the two totals for Alabama this year were 50 and 47, and they both went over. And then this comes in at 46, despite those two going over. I hope Wisconsin is able to run the ball. I think Wisconsin should be able to have some success running the ball. That's the spread, I think, is very fickle. I also think Alabama has Georgia on deck too. So if Alabama gets up, I think Alabama wants to just kind of check out at some point and just keep running in. I mean, I could easily see this game something to the tune of maybe like 28-10, something like that, I think the side is really tricky, but I think Alabama wants to move on to Georgia. I think Wisconsin just doesn't want to get blown out, and I think the total says a lot. The fact that Alabama, the first 2 games went over, and yet this one is still slated even lower than that at 46. So, yeah.
All right, let's shift gears. I want to talk a little bit NFL. All right, we have week 2 in the NFL. It's overreaction week, right? Everybody that won last week is going to go undefeated, and they're all amazing. Everybody that lost last week, they stink. They should fire all the head coaches and everything like that. Okay, that's like the general public's take on it. Was there anything that you saw in week 1 that you think could be either a positive or negative harbinger of things to come? Maybe there were some teams in the preseason or during the offseason you were like, you know what, I want to see how this looks. And you saw it and you were like, ooh, that's good, or oh, that's bad.
Well, I mean, I can tell you, I thought Jacksonville was going to be better than people were giving them credit for. The coach is a complete, when he said Duval and everybody just sort of really cringed. The coach is a little quirky, kind of reminds me of McDaniel in his first year, but I think he's a really good coach. So it should be interesting to see what that plus 3.5. I'm surprised the Bengals aren't favored by more, and maybe because people just thought that they didn't look so good against Cleveland. But I thought Jacksonville will be better than what people will think. I thought I think the Bears are a live dog this week. I think the Lions offensive defensive coordinators, I am a huge fan of the Bears offense, believe it or not. I just think he's a fantastic coach, but I think he'll finally get them to where they need to go. So I was happy to see, if you could do that with Caleb Williams, that's pretty impressive. You know what I mean? The guy I think is a fantastic offensive minded coach. I think it should be really interesting to see what I thought the Dolphins were going to be bad, and the Dolphins, I think, have beaten the Patriots to a tune of 7 or 8 times in a row now?
Yeah, they own them. They especially own them down in South Beach.
So 4 and 8 of 9. And it's interesting. I think if the Dolphins lose, I think you're going to start hearing rumors about Belichick coming to Miami at some point. Who
would want that guy at this point?
I think that will be interesting. So we'll see. The line is at -1 too. I do think, McDaniel was the odds-on favorite to get fired this year. So that very well could happen if they lose this game too. Hold
on. Let's stay there for a second. I know that you're in your handicapping, knowing you and working with you as long as you have, you love to capitalize on bounce backs, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like somebody goes out and lays an egg. You're the first one to swoop in and grab the value on them in the next game. Looking at this number where Miami is favored, even though they didn't play well at all, they probably looked the worst of all of the teams last week. Do you see value on the Dolphins here in a bounce back situation? Or are you just selling your Dolphin stock? Are you like, there's something fundamentally broken with this team? They've been bad for the last 2 years. Just sell.
So there's 3 things here. One, Tua basically, if you looked at the press clippings, Tua called out his team, right? Tua was like, will these guys bounce back? It'll be interesting to see how they go about their process. He uses a lot of Saban terminology. I thought the Patriots were very successful in their first week, meaning that you have a coach in Carroll in his first game. And I thought that was a fantastic game. People think he's too old. He's obviously over 70 years old. People think that he just won't be a good coach. So I think, Vegas put their best game plan in possible. And I thought New England was better than expected. You know what I mean? So I say that to say that New England could come in coming off of a loss and could play really well here. And their loss could end up looking good against the Raiders. The Raiders only come in as a 3.5-point dog after the Chargers beat Kansas City on the road. So that's a lot of respect for the Raiders as only a plus 3.5 dog. I know many people that would still take the Chargers -5.5 against Vegas, right? So seeing them only as a 3.5-point dog shows them respect. I am not a huge fan of the Dolphins. I think the Dolphins, they're a big mess in a lot of ways, both offensively, both defensively. They're injured. I think there's a lack of culture. I think that, I thought the Patriots are more impressive, but then again, McDaniels is coaching for his job, right? This could be one of those, remember when the Dolphins hung almost 60 or 70 points against the Broncos, right? That one, I ain't as good as I once was, but I'm as good once as I ever was type of thing. So maybe he coaches for his job, so that's the reason why I'm just staying away. But as far as bounce backs, I think you can legitimately look at, the Ravens on a bounce back. You can legitimately look at the Seahawks. I think the Steelers were quite possibly, they could be on a letdown, could be overrated, right? So I think the Seahawks could be a live dog. I think you can have to look at the Giants as a live dog. They can't play any worse than they did. And I think if Russell
Can they though? I don't know. The Giants been looking for the bottom for about a decade now, and they haven't found it yet. So I want to go back to the Ravens though, because they're a really interesting test case. If Derrick Henry does not fumble, they do not lose.
I have a winning week if Derrick Henry doesn't fumble.
Right. Oh my God. I feel so bad for the people there were people out there holding Ravens tickets on Sunday night and then holding Bears tickets on Monday night. And those were as bad a beats as you're going to.
You mean like me?
Right.
I was 3-1 heading into the last 2 games.
Unbelievable. It's unbelievable, right? So what are expectations from the Ravens? Because, I got to tell you, I kind of liked what I saw from the Browns. They should have won that game, but they Browns it up as they are wont to do. But the thing that stood out at me about that Cleveland game is that their defense. That's where I had the question about them coming into the season. Was the Browns defense going to be the Browns defense from 2023 when they were one of the 3 or 4 best defenses in football, kept them in a lot of games, made them a very live underdog? Or were they going to be the defense that we saw last year that finished like 27th, 28th in the NFL? Same coordinator, a lot of the same personnel, 2 wildly disparate outcomes. I liked what I saw from the Browns there last weekend, holding Cincinnati below 200 total yards. Do you smell an active dog here? Divisional game, rivalry game, teams know each other, a lot of motivation, and it's a lot of points.
So I stayed away from this game from a couple of things. In one way, you want to take the Ravens because you think they're going to bounce back, they're going to be ticked off at the world, and they're going to play a complete game, lotta, right? But in another way, you forget that Joe Flacco used to quarterback for the Ravens for 11 years. And then on top of that, he added on many more years afterwards. So he's playing his former team. He's going to be excited. I can easily see the Browns getting up for this game. I thought they showed a lot of promise. I'll also tell you something else too. I think the Bengals are a lot better defense than people give them credit for. They didn't show anything during the preseason, and I think they did that on purpose. Like, they showed nothing. They showed the same vanilla, cover 2, etc. But they were saving it up for the regular season probably. But I can't take the Ravens because I think the Browns with Flacco, as he faces a former team, they could play quite well. It's a divisional game, but I can't take the Browns because the Ravens are coming off a bounce back. So you just kind of throw it away,
Yeah, it was like, I was thinking about this. I don't remember if it was week 2 or week 3 last year where the Ravens were like 13-point home favorites against the Raiders and then lost outright. I think it was week 2 last year. So I don't know. I'm getting bad vibes from the Ravens right now. But like I said, is that recency bias? If Derrick Henry doesn't fumble, they win in Buffalo. That spread might be 13.5.
Yeah.
If they ended up beating Buffalo by 15 points, that spread's probably 2 touchdowns at least. So maybe there's value there with the Ravens. Was there anything else on the NFL card this weekend that jumped out at you? That was a game that you really thought about or really dug into and at the last minute decided not to play?
So 2, I like the over tonight in Washington, Green Bay, because I think both of these teams played really bad offenses, right? Mm-hmm. And now they're going to be tested. I think Green Bay is going to be tested against a pretty good Washington offense, right? And I think Washington is going to be tested against a pretty good Green Bay offense. Washington is no longer playing the lowly Giants, and Green Bay is not going to be playing a Cowboy or a Lions.
Lenny is just dying back there too right now. The fact that you called the Lions not a good offense, like, I can feel him. Like,
I mean, I think the Lions are phenomenal last year. I'm not as big on their coordinators this year as I was last year. Last year they had, I think when you go back 10 years from now and you look back at both these coaches, their coordinators that they had is, when you see the old Belichick and Saban when they were with the Cleveland Browns and so on. I think these 2 guys are that good of coordinators that they lost. Same with the Eagles, right? When they lost their coordinators to head coaching jobs. So I think they lost an unbelievable team. But I like the over between Washington and Green Bay for that reason. That's why I think that total sits at 49. I'm very interested to see what happens in the Bills-Jets game. I wanted to take the Bills. I sort of felt like the Jets, blew their wad, if you will, against the Steelers. And I thought that the Bills, obviously they started off last game so slow that they would start a little bit faster. So I leaned on the Bills, but I also didn't want to go against a first-year coach facing the Bills, et cetera. Anything else? I still think the Niners are going to cover. I heard Mac Jones is going to be the quarterback, right? So, I think that I think he'll be fine. I think he'll play well. I just think the Saints are horrible. That's my 8-unit future for the year, under 4.5 wins. So I know the public's on them too, but I don't think it's going to matter. I almost pulled the trigger on the Seahawks, but didn't do it. McDonald is a Georgia guy. He graduate assistant and went to high school in Georgia and then went off, obviously to Michigan and then to Baltimore. But I almost pulled I think the Steelers could very well have a letdown as well. I almost pulled a plug on Denver, right?
Look, you got to come to my side. You're like, I almost did this. You got to adopt the Ferringo method and just play all of these. Just let a bunch of like 2 and 3 unit players rip. All right, so I'm guessing though your card is a little bit more this weekend is a little more skewed towards college than the NFL.
Yeah, I have 5 college and 1 NFL, which is rare because normally it's the other way around.
Okay, and where's your top play, college or NFL this week?
College, Saturday, 12 o'clock.
Saturday, 12 o'clock. Early start on Saturday, 7-unit play, I'm guessing?
Yeah, I only have 1 top play, so.
Awesome. Well, listen, thank you for taking time to join us. Always love getting your opinion on these games and stuff like that. We will have you back. Good luck. Let's get Arun out, and let's bring in our next guest, Vernon Croy. Again, don't forget about Arun's 7-unit college football play, noon on Sunday. Vernon, what'd you make me for dinner there, bud?
How's it going?
Not too bad. What's for dinner tonight?
Hopefully a steak if I cash this Thursday night football again.
Okay, like the Thursday night game. You know, that's I'm glad that you brought that up, because that's something that I wanted to ask you about, is that I've noticed over the last 3 years, this season and the last 2 seasons, you love attacking that Thursday night game. That is usually one of your top plays of the weekend. What is it? I think 2 years ago, there were 15 of them. Last year, the overwhelming majority. What is it about the Thursday night NFL games that you find such tremendous value in?
So the public are normally swayed one way. I'm not always going against the public, but that's definitely a high percentage. And then I look at the previous week. When I handicap, looking at the previous week is huge for me, right? Because some of the teams that won last week shouldn't have won.
Sure.
I don't want to give my play away, obviously. So, but when I handicap, it's looking at third down percentages, fourth down percentages. How do the quarterbacks do? So that's Thursday night football. I've always dominated, so that's why I do that.
So tonight's game, you have a big play, a 6-unit play on the side, which you guys can get at Doc Sports right now. Again, there's that free 60 link down in the description. Also, that will take you over to Doc Sports. You can use that same as cash. You can get tonight's play as well as someone else's top play, maybe even Vernon. Your other top plays on what, Saturday or Sunday? Sunday.
Other top plays on Sunday, so it's.
You can get both of these top plays. So I'm not gonna pressure on the side, but the total in tonight's game. So one of the major themes of last week in the NFL was the under, right? The 13 out of 16 games go under. So whether it's the Thursday night game or even just going to the weekend, are you looking for some statistical regression there? Did you notice something that, like, hey, everyone's trying to mimic what Philadelphia did last year, which was run the ball and play good defense? Maybe that's the pendulum swinging back the other way in the NFL. Like, how are you looking at the totals, and how do you see that impacting outcomes?
So you know what? I actually expect a lot of these games this week to go over the posted total.
Okay.
Looking at the matchups, there's definitely a lot of points in a lot of these games as far as what I see. There was regression last week, but I expect this week's going to be a lot different.
I know you're not a huge totals player, but was there any totals on the board that you saw that was like, oh, shootout?
Well, the New York Giants Dallas Cowboys game.
Okay.
I expect that to fly over 44.5. So
I like it. But go on with that. Like, what was it about those two teams that you saw last week that makes you think that they're due for?
So Dak's definitely due for a breakout here, I think, this week. The Giants also can put up a big number, I think, against this Cowboys defense. So,
what was there any game? What I always like to ask it to people that come on. What was the last game on your card? What was the game that you were thinking about, debating about, really studying, and at the last minute you're like, no, I can't do it?
So you know what? There really wasn't anything. Probably the San Francisco New Orleans game. I just couldn't touch it, right? With Purdy being out, I thought about it, but I just don't think they have a capable backup. New Orleans is a bad team. San Francisco should be favored in this, and rightfully so, but with Purdy out, just couldn't touch it.
You know, there's a kind of an expectation right now that a lot of these second-year quarterbacks, your Drake Mays, your Bo Nixes, Jay Daniels, that had some success last year, that success is just going to carry over into this year. I got to tell you, there was some bad quarterback play out of that group last year. Are there any of those second-year quarterbacks that you're particularly concerned about moving forward this season?
You know what? Not really, because in the first year, that's kind of their get your feet wet kind of year, right? So there's really not one quarterback that I pick on. I don't think. Maybe maybe in New England,
Mhm.
but I actually have a play in that game, so I can't really talk about that game either. But
Yeah, that was one that Arun and I were diving into, whether or not Miami is a good buy low option
yeah,
right now. I listen. That's my
well,
whole thing about New England is that everybody loved New England coming into the season. A lot of people
yeah.
betting them over. A lot of people
Well,
thinking they were the second best team in that division. I'm like, look, I don't know if Drake May is any good. We just saw this with Mac Jones. Mac Jones made the Pro Bowl his rookie year, and everyone was like, oh, Patriots have their quarterback of the future. Let's move on. I'm seeing a lot of Mac Jones and Drake May. You got any thoughts?
100%, right? And I think the Bucs over adjust the line in that game. Obviously, Miami got blown out by the Colts last week, right? But yeah, I'm not going to tell you whether I have a total or a side in that, but I do have a play on that game. It's only a 4-unit play, but I do like the play a lot. So in total this week, I have 7 total NFL plays. No college football at all this week. I'm working to find a college football expert as we speak, but yeah, I honestly don't want to release anything just to release something, right? So I want to make sure I win for my clients. So,
wow, that's good. You got to play to your strengths, right?
100%.
So,
yeah, the NFL has always been my number one sport, I think. So, 9 out of 10 winning NFL seasons, so it speaks for itself. I'm actually in the Circa Millions contest, so I was in Vegas last week, ripping up a little bit, and so I went 4-1 in the contest last week. I expect probably 4-1 again this week. 5-0 would be nice. But
what were some of your big takeaways from week 1 of the NFL?
You know what? There's a lot of transparency, I think. But like I said, some of the teams that won last week really shouldn't have. When you dive into the stats and stuff like that,
do you have one? Do you have one of those teams that you didn't use a play on that you thought kind of escaped? Because I can tell you why you're looking. I thought Minnesota. You know, my takeaway from that Minnesota game is JJ McCarthy's bad.
I agree 100% with you on that. Yeah, I actually gave out a free parlay on that game, so I had Minnesota and the under. But yeah, no, he played terrible.
Yeah, he wasn't good, and that game should have been a blowout. And again, if the Bears had taken care of their business, not made some of the mistakes that they did, and maybe won 27-10, which is what that game was looking at.
Yeah,
right?
they basically.
I don't think that Lions number is as high as it is this week. I think that number would have been a 3 rather than a 6. Do you think that there might be a little bit of value here with the Bears on the bounce back?
So I can't touch that game. I have a play on it, but
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, all right. Well, let's talk about like a lot of new coordinators that were moving around, some of them following new coaches. Was there any new offensive or defensive system or scheme that you saw last week that you're like, okay, I wasn't sure how this was going to look, but after seeing it, like, I'm kind of excited, or this might take a little longer than I thought?
It's hard to say after week 1, right? There's nothing really that stood out for me. Obviously, there's a few people that struggled offensively, but yeah, I don't. There's nothing that stands out after week 1. I'll give it a couple more weeks, and then we can talk about it. But
were there any teams coming into the season that maybe you were a little higher on than the general public?
Probably Carolina. So I believe Carolina actually blew that game last week. If you dive into the stats there, Jacksonville had a couple big plays, right? So obviously the pick 6. But yeah, it was. I think Carolina. Obviously, they're not a great team, but I think they can definitely pull off some upsets, I think, this year.
What is it about Bryce Young that you've seen that makes you think that he's ready to take that next step?
So the thing is, so last week he did struggle. I wasn't impressed last week with him, but obviously he's getting his feet wet. I believe he will be much better than what we saw last week. Like, here, let me pull up the stats. So last week, yeah, he only completed 51.4%, 154 yards, had a touchdown. He'll get better.
Okay. What about the young receivers? You like? Did either one of them jump off the page at you?
Not really. But I do think Carolina is a good young team.
Okay, so you were buying into the theory that like their momentum from last season, the December, they were playing better in December, played Kansas City tough, played Philly tough, stole a couple wins. You're kind of expecting that to carry over into this season?
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Were there any teams that maybe you were selling that the general public or prognosticators were a little higher on that you're like, you know what, I don't like the direction this team is going?
Probably San Francisco, I think.
Okay.
I honestly believe that they should have handled Seattle a lot easier than what they did, right? Thankfully, I had them in the circa million, so they covered the spread barely. So that was a nail biter. I was watching that at Circa actually last week.
Yeah, that game really should have been a blow. Well, you could look at it both ways. If you had to take it on Seattle, you could say Seattle should have won. If Sam Darnold just did what Sam Darnold does, which was make mistakes in the worst possible moment. If he doesn't fumble, they probably score. They probably win. However, San Francisco also, I think they went 2-5 in the red zone, 1-3 on goal-to-go situations. They had turnovers. They had missed field goals. They kind of had everything go wrong and still won that game, right?
Yeah, no, 100%. And I honestly think Seattle's a bad team, to be honest with you. I don't like them at all. That's one game I wanted to hit. I'll probably bet it, but it's not a play for me. Pittsburgh -3 seems like a steal. Aaron Rodgers put up, obviously everyone knows, 4 TDs, right, last week. But, I'm not sold on the Seattle team. I think they're definitely going to struggle this season. And
they were one of the teams I talked about. I like everything about them except the quarterback. Like I love Clint Kubiak, their new offensive coordinator. I like what McDonald has done with them defensively, how good they played defensively last year. I like that they run the ball. There's a lot to like there, but I don't like Sam Darnold. I think they made a major mistake by getting rid of Geno Smith and bringing in Sam Darnold. What Sam Darnold did last year was a complete and total aberration. Where you look at Geno Smith, plug and play him in Las Vegas with really no weapons, and the guy throws for 360 yards.
Yeah, like what did Darnold put up last week? 150, I think.
Yeah, right. Yeah. He was bad. Now he didn't get helped out. Cooper Kupp dropped a couple passes, this and that. But I'm kind of with you that the more I see Seattle, the more I'm like, all right, here's a team. Go ahead, Robert. No, I was just going to say I'm kind of with you on Seattle that maybe they're not going to be as good as people expect.
Yeah, here brings up the question, right? So Pittsburgh and the Jets last week, right? What did they put up?
A lot, 66 points. Yeah,
ridiculous, right? So is Pittsburgh's defense really that bad? And if they are, then Darnold's probably going to have a pretty good day.
What do you think the answer to that question is? Because
I don't think they're that bad.
I don't think so either. I watched that game, and I swear to God, Justin Fields looked like Jesus. Like, he was amazing. Like, he was putting the ball on a rope. He was running to beat pressure. Like, Justin Fields played as well as any quarterback in the NFL last weekend. Yeah. So I don't think it was on Pittsburgh.
Sorry, that said, I do have a play on that Buffalo-New York Jets game, so I can't touch that. But, it was a very interesting game to watch. 66 points, and I don't think anyone saw that coming. But,
all right, you do not have a play in the Baltimore-Cleveland game, correct?
No, I don't.
Okay. Thoughts? I touched on this briefly with Arun. Are you expecting a bounce back from Baltimore? Do you feel like that's too many points to lay out in a divisional rivalry game?
Here's the thing, right? And since he played Cleveland close last week, Baltimore obviously lost in Buffalo, right? And that's actually a game that I had last week that I also bet on. But
brutal.
Yeah, I think it's a very, very tough spot for Baltimore coming off that loss against Buffalo. Like, that was a huge game, right? So it could be a letdown spot for them, I think, this week, even though it's at home. 11.5. Yeah, I don't know. I like Cleveland in that spot.
Yeah, I know that Strike Point Sports released that as a free play in the Doc Sports newsletter, which we send out every Wednesday, jam-packed full of free plays, promos, tidbits, stuff like that we have. All right, Vernon, thank you very much for taking some time to join us. I'm glad that you could.
Appreciate it.
I look forward to having you back in the future, and Good luck this weekend. Don't forget about tonight's 6-unit play and then 7-unit NFL play on Saturday, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Good luck this weekend. Take it easy.
Thanks, Robert. Good luck this weekend.
Yep. All right. I see Lenny over there. I know what you're doing over there in the comment section. You're trying to AstroTurf this Detroit Lions momentum. Nobody's buying it, bro. Nobody's buying it. Everybody is with me. All right. You're welcome on the Phillies game. What he was referencing was my 8-unit Major League Baseball game of the year on Tuesday. That one was, I don't want to say it was easy because that kind of undercuts what it was, but Rangers Suarez against Sean Manaea. And right now the Mets are a mess. I don't understand those at all. All right. Thoughts on Notre Dame, Texas A&M. I'm of two minds of this. I know one guy on our site has a very big play on Notre Dame, loves Notre Dame in this game. Okay. My lean was on Texas A&M. And here's why. If you remember, these two teams played each other in the opener last season. It was 23-13. Notre Dame won. First game at home, new coach, new systems. Texas A&M wasn't then what I feel like they are now. I feel like this A&M team, I think Mike Elko has them trending in the right direction. Offensively, they look fantastic. Their quarterback, Marcel Reese, is a game changer, okay? With Notre Dame, they're at home, they're laying less than a touchdown. First of all, it jumped out at me that they're laying less than a touchdown, that number is 6.5. That's kind of baiting action on Notre Dame, right? Which is weird for the books to do because Notre Dame is such a public team. You would think that they would inflate the Notre Dame numbers because they know that the public wants to bet them. So we have a Texas A&M team playing with revenge. We have a Notre Dame team that's coming off a bye. They lost that game against Miami. Huge, high-profile game for them. Then they had to sit on that for 2 weeks. I don't think that's good for a team this early in the season. You lose a game, you want to get back out there and you want to play. So I don't know where Notre Dame is going to be at mentally coming into this one. Also, we have to ask ourselves, is this year's Notre Dame team as good as they were last year? I know they almost won a national title. They made it to the championship game. They were a great, great team last year. But look at some of the other teams. Look at your SMUs, your Arizona States, even your Indianas that were great last season that have not been the same. The books are treating them the same and the public are treating these teams the same as they were last year, but they're not the same team. And until Notre Dame proves it to me, I'm not betting them like they were last year. So I would take the point. So that was a long-winded answer to a very simple question. But let's transition here and bring in Griffin Murphy. Okay. He's a guy who's used to hearing me talk, used to hearing me blab about all kinds of things. Griffin, what are your thoughts on that A&M Notre Dame game?
Yeah, Robert, there's a reason that this game isn't on my card in particular. And I will say Texas A&M, they haven't been battle tested yet this season, so we don't really know what to expect. Obviously, they're a great program, always are. So we know they're going to be at the top of the line when we come to the end of the season. But for Notre Dame, you hit it right on the head. I was listening prior to entering the show. Notre Dame, they've played one game this season. They lost that game, massive upset. Then after that factor, they've been sitting and waiting for the next 2 weeks. I see that as a negative. A team, when you lose a game like that, especially your season opener, you want to come out firing next week for revenge. Sitting on it for 2 weeks, in my eyes, that's a negative and that's a liability. So that's the reason I don't have any action in this game, Robert. I think the line's very interesting. And I think if you're going to go with the team, Texas A&M is going to be more established. They've got more games under their belt and the rust is definitely shook off. But at the same time, I don't like the game. I don't like this matchup. I'm going to be a fan in this one, Robert, and watch.
Yeah, I'm with you. I use Texas A&M in a teaser. I think there's a lot of value teasing them up to 13.5. You're getting almost 2 touchdowns. I'll be really surprised if this game was a blowout. Now, a lot of non-conference action the first 2 weeks, a lot of big marquee games, stuff like that. We're actually starting to transition back into conference play, though. SEC games going on this week. Some of the best games of the board, some of probably the most heavily bet games of the board. Was there anything in the SEC that jumped off the page at you this week?
As far as the SEC, not necessarily. There were a lot of games that jumped off the page for me at me. I will say, though, looking at a matchup like this, so not even going there, Texas Tech against Oregon State. I just pulled up the game in front of me because this was a game that was actually on my card. I ended up taking it off. Oregon State is not a good program right now. This team is in a full-blown debacle. They are lost at the quarterback position, although at the end of their most recent matchup, I believe that was against Fresno State, if I'm not mistaken, they started to get it together at the quarterback position, and that was their biggest weakness. But they have a bunch of transfer students as well coming into play. And on top of that, defense has not been strong whatsoever. It's tremendous liabilities. So for Texas Tech, they're way more established. The team's coming in strong. They're laying 23.5 with the total sitting at 62.5. When you look at that total and the way that Oregon State's been playing football right now, that just tells me that Texas Tech is going to run up the scoreboard on them. So I really like the way Texas Tech has been playing. Oregon State, they've been a dumpster fire for me as far as what I've watched. So I think that's a game that kind of jumped off the page for me, Robert.
Yeah, I haven't had a ton of success with those spreads in that 20 to like 25 range typically. But I kind of agree with you. Like Texas Tech, they've scored over 60 points in both of their games. I know it was only against Kent State and Arkansas Pine Bluff. But you know what? There's a lot of really good teams that have played a lot of really bad teams and not done what they did. Like Georgia played Austin Peay last week. They didn't score 60 points against Austin Peay. So should we be buying stock in this Texas Tech team?
I don't know necessarily right now. Again, for me, always in college football, when it comes out to these ranked teams where everybody gets so high and mighty on them, I have to wait and see. I prolong those big key marquee matchups. I prolong those and I wait to see who's actually established, because when you look at games like that, for instance, Georgia versus Tennessee this weekend, there's automatically incentive. We're going to have war, which in this game we are absolutely going to have war. But again, the point spreads are always off in those games, and there's not really the right angle for me to tackle that and capitalize on that. There's a lot more other games on the board, always, every single slate. And that's why I love college football so much, that have so many soft lines involved that you can kind of just fade away from and attack the soft lines, opposed to going at a massive game like that. But with that being said, I do have a massive marquee matchup on my college slate Saturday, 7-unit best bet as well.
Go on. Afternoon game, evening game.
It is a noon game, and I am locked and loaded, Robert. 3-0 in college football this season, and they've been crazy winners, man. I started off the season with Marshall plus 38.5. Or no,
oh my God, I had Georgia that game.
No, dude. We can talk about that one. First game I had Hawaii. I won that on a game-winning field goal.
Yeah.
Week 2, dude. That Georgia game, man, I sat outside, watched that entire game out back. I felt like I got the absolute piss beat out of me. But by the time that game hit halftime, watching Gunnar Stockton and this offensive line just absolutely blow up Marshall playing. Dude, Robert, the Marshall didn't even look like the varsity team. They looked like JV.
Well, I saw that was your top play that week, and I was like, does this guy know that, like, their top 60 players all transfer from one to Southern Miss? But look, like, here's the thing. Like, when you're hot, and that's when you know that you're a hot hand and you're going. That's why people should be on your card right now, because you're winning games that maybe you shouldn't. And that's the way these things go. There, like I said, there were a lot of people that lost games that they were shouldn't. There was somebody that had a top play last week on Baltimore, lost that. We had 2 guys that had 7-unit plays on the Bears on Sunday night. That was a game
ridiculous, man.
Right. So sometimes you just can't argue with the gambling guys. Now, you mentioned Georgia. I do want to talk about that Tennessee game really quickly.
Sure.
Do you feel like it is obvious that everyone and their sister is on Tennessee on this? People are predicting upsets. I know a lot of handicappers that are on the Volunteers. Do you feel like that line, though, has come down into a range where all the value is on Georgia? I mean, they have beaten them 8 straight times, all by double digits. Like, am I missing something here?
No, not at all. And I agree with you. Watching this Georgia team, and it all comes down to the respect of the name Kirby Smart. This guy is a real legitimate head football coach. He knows how to win games. And that's the biggest thing that I've seen out of Georgia year in, year out. They are continuously disciplined. They continuously make critical, minimal mistakes. If there's mistakes made, the team is always good. And Gunnar Stockton, nobody's really given this kid enough credit yet, but they will. He is a very good quarterback, and he knows how to lead this offense. They have a very strong offensive line, and their defense interior is very strong. But I am totally sold on this offense. They have a dominant run game, absolute dominant dual force. But Gunnar Stockton, he's a dual threat. He's not that fast, but at the same time, he can scramble and get away. And that is so critical, especially at the college football level. I love the way that Georgia's playing right now. They have not let me down. I get it. Last week against Austin Peay, they only put up like 37 points offensively. They're just controlling the game right now. And Kirby Smart did that against Marshall. It was the same thing.
He is
This
he is notorious for that. I think he's like 2-12 against the spread as a favorite of 35 or more. I think he's 0-8 against the spread in his last 8 games against FCS teams.
Yeah.
He just doesn't put the boot to him. Like if they had wanted to do what Texas Tech did and score 60 points, they could have done that last week, but they didn't because I feel like they're playing possum for this game. Now, another game, similar theme, pretty much exact same theme, Clemson, Georgia Tech. Same type of thing. The preseason line on this game was like 7.5, 8 for Clemson. Even earlier in the week, it was like 5 or 6 for Clemson. This has come all the way down to Clemson -3. This was Clemson, right? Ooh, Clemson, everybody's national championship pick heading into the season. They lost to LSU, which I don't think is a terrible loss. That game could have gone either way. They did not play well against Troy, down 16 in that game. What do we do with Clemson? Is this game now at a point where because right now what they're saying, even with the 3-point line, what that says to me is Georgia Tech's going to win the game. Okay, I'm not taking Georgia Tech +3 to, cover and lose by a field goal. If you take Georgia Tech, you're saying, I think Georgia Tech wins this game. Am I crazy or is the value here on Clemson? Like, is this number dropped way too much?
Robert, this game drove me nuts all week long, man. I finally today, when because this was going to be my game. It didn't even make the card. Yeah, because how confused I got with this game. Because looking at this thing, opened up at +2.5. So basically, they're baiting you that you can take Clemson on the money line to win this game outright. Georgia Tech has not beaten Clemson since 2004. So that's been 20 years, if I'm not mistaken. So when I looked at this game, how in the world could that have been the actual metric when I was looking at this? Clemson, they're always a threat. I'm not sold on Cade Klubnik. I'll tell you that right now. But
no.
Dabo Klubnik, I've been watching this kid for years and years out. You know what? His touchdown to interception diversification is not there. He gets wild when the pressure is on. The pressure is on him mentally, and he can't handle it. I am not sold on this kid whatsoever. I wanted to rip that kid apart real quick. Anyways, going back, Dabo Swinney to me, though, Robert, is always a threat coming into any game. And when you have a Clemson team that has owned Georgia Tech for as long as they have, how do you take this matchup? And then they're giving you basically a pick-em situation here. So that is why this game didn't make my card. I love Georgia Tech's offense. I think they have a very good quarterback. I know he's a little bit banged up. He was probable.
He's going to, he'll play. I'm with you.
So he's going. So I know that's going to be definitely very interesting to watch. They have a great offense. I think it's going to be a high-scoring game. At the same time, though, it didn't make the card for me, man, because I flipped out. I wanted this to be my top game. I wanted to be all over Georgia Tech.
I did too. I wanted that number to stay where it was preseason, where it was like 7.5. Okay. And then I would have been all over Georgia Tech. They've been a great underdog under Brent Key. But I'm gonna be completely honest with you. I took Clemson. I used it as a play. I'm like, this is the only way to play this night. The value is there. I don't like Clemson. I was on Docs Daily, which is every day on this Doc Sports YouTube channel from 1 to 1:30. If you like and subscribe to this channel, you will be on Docs every day, on Docs Daily. I said on there, I was like, look, before the season, I was like, Clemson's not winning the national championship. They're a good team. They're a talented team. They're an experienced team. But I've watched this team very closely over the last 2 years, and I've seen so much stupidity out of them in games that they are not going to be able to hold it together. That being said, I'm with you. Like, Georgia Tech doesn't play very well against Clemson, and they do have top 10, top 15 talent with the Tigers. So I think that pendulum has swung back the other way. All right, real quick, I want to get into, before we get Scott Spritzer in here, I want to get into the NFL real quick. Just thoughts on week 1. Anything that was an aberration, anything that surprised you, anything that you were like, that went exactly the way that I thought it did, just like random week 1 takeaways.
I think the week 1 biggest surprise for everybody has to be that New York Jets Pittsburgh Steelers game, Robert. I mean, I had circled in under all over it. Justin Fields getting his first start on a key matchup.
How good did he look?
Dude, he looked too good. And I didn't like it. Come on, we're Bears fans here. We could go about this right now. But again, so going back to it, Justin Fields comes out. I'm thinking in my eyes, This is his first start here. He's going to be pretty nervous going into this game. He's lights out, absolutely everything. The entire offense looked great. And I don't know if it was the offensive play calling with the New York Jets, but at the same time, they were dominant. And then on the other flip of the coin, the Pittsburgh Steelers, Aaron Rodgers, subject line, 4 touchdowns, absolutely sensational. All everybody's done for the past year is bag on this guy and how he's too old, this and that. Well, then he absolutely goes off in this matchup. And I'm thinking we've got 2 trending defense under teams here. These are 2 solid defenses. These are always under teams. And I don't think either of these offenses are going to get off the bus in this game. Completely shocked the hell out of me. So that brings me to my next point. So I look at the Pittsburgh Steelers this week, and they're laying 3 points. So a way that I really like to handicap, and I'm going to give this out because I don't have any action in this game, but when there's a massive public subject header like that, Aaron Rodgers, 4 touchdowns all over SportsCenter, ESPN, NFL Live, you name it, that always brings in a question mark. That line should have been 5.5 if I'm not mistaken, Robert, because it came out at -3 and it was at 2.5 at one point. That was such a baiting game for me. That's the public fade play for me, and that's where I go the other way. And I free played that on our YouTube channel as well, so you guys can check that out.
All right, where's your top play this weekend?
I've got a 7 unit in college football that goes off at noon, and I've got a 6 unit in the NFL that goes off at noon as well, or 1 p.m. I'm sorry, Eastern time.
Again, I believe it's 26 and 8 plus 12,000 across all sports.
27 and 8 now.
You won today? Boom. Listen, folks, this is how it goes. When you're hot, you got to ride the hot hand. It's not always like this. So when things are going good, you got to ride it. 27 and 8 plus 13,000 just about with all plays in all sports rated 5 units or above. He has 2 of them in football this weekend. Use that link below, the free 60, to get his whole week's worth of package. All right. Thanks for taking some time, Griffin. I appreciate it. Good luck this weekend.
Thanks for having me, Robert. Appreciate you, man.
All right, Lenny, let's bring in, last but not least, let's bring in the savvy veteran, Savvy Scott Spritzer. All right, as I mentioned, normally, I communicate with you guys throughout the week. These will be some themes. This is what we're going to talk about. I didn't do any of that because I'm just full bore into handicapping. So I'm going to let you pick door number 1 or door number 2. You want to start with college football? Or you want to start with NFL?
Let's start with college. What the heck?
All right, college football. I want to continue on something, 3 games in particular that I was just talking about with Griffin. Okay. Clemson at Georgia Tech, Georgia at Tennessee, and one I didn't talk about with him, but Vanderbilt at South Carolina. All lines where the public and everyone in particular, everyone in general is on the underdog in those games. At what point do you feel like we have reached those points with Clemson, Georgia, and South Carolina? 3 preseason top 12 teams where the value is on them as favorites, or do you see the dogs barking in 2 of those 3 games?
I'm looking at 2 of those 3 games. I've got, I'll talk about those 2 in just a minute. There was one that was never going to be on my card, so I'll just make that quick. That was the Clemson Georgia Tech game. Went against Clemson in week 0 or whatever it was against LSU. And that offense looked, again, stagnant as it has for a couple of years now under Dabo. And I heard you guys talking about Klubnik. I'm not a big Klubnik fan either. And I think when he gets down and behind, things aren't working well. He does panic and think too much. So I think you guys are spot on in that. But I left it alone. I didn't like the line from the get-go. The other 2 games, and I'll start with
hold on one second. I want to interrupt you, though. Do you I ended up pulling the trigger on Clemson. Preseason line, looking at that Georgia Tech, that preseason line was 7.5. Even earlier in this week, that line was 6, 4.5, right around there, the underdog. Do you agree in situations like that where there is such a line shift? Do you agree with my thinking that, I don't like Clemson long-term, but this number now, there's value here? Or should do you recommend to people in those situations, just don't play it? Okay, you don't like Georgia Tech as the underdog because you're now not getting enough points. Just don't play it. Or do you think I'm right? Where hey, Clemson, top 15 team, national title contender, only laying 3 points against a team that they've owned for 20 years. What are your thoughts on that?
No, I agree with what you did. If you had an opinion on, if I would have had an opinion on Clemson and I liked them a little bit, but it wasn't necessarily going to make my card, and then that line change that we saw, like you just referred to, I'm going to jump on Clemson and add them to my card in all likelihood. So I agree with what you did. For me, it was just a case of I didn't like either side, old line, new line, in between line sense, all that kind of stuff. So, but no, I would say if you had an opinion on Georgia Tech and you didn't get the early number a while back, then you just pass that game for that reason. If you had an opinion on Clemson and then you get that better number, you jump on Clemson, even if it's just a small play, But again, for me, it was like I'm staying away from the game altogether. And what I do on Sundays before the lines come out for the next week, I start writing down teams I like or games I like. And then I go back and I set my lines, Robert. I was asked a few times over the years about what's the key to handicapping football and, being a winner in the Westgate Super Contest and winning the OV Invitational here in Las Vegas. My key, the biggest key I got, and a guy gave it to me 30 years ago, old better, and I've used it ever since. Make your lines before any lines come out. Make them a week in advance. So, for instance, for next week's college football lines, I made my lines before this week's games are played. I made my lines on Monday. And so what I do then, I sit down like this last Sunday and I jot down, according to what my lines were before any of those games were played last week, I write down teams that I'm interested in handicapping and looking at. And what that does real quick is it keeps you from overreacting to one game. If a team plays very positive football away from their norm or very negative football away from their norm, you're throwing that out the window for the majority of what you've seen throughout the course of the year. So it becomes even more important as the season gets deeper into the season when you get 4 or 5 weeks under your belt. And, that's kind of what I did with Georgia Tech and Clemson. I kind of had a line range even before it started moving and just threw it out. I heard you guys talking about Georgia. Now there's a team that I liked, and it was 7, and it dropped all the way down to 3.5. And guess what? My top 5 college football countdown video, number 1 play in the countdown, going to give it away here. The Georgia Bulldogs.
Thank you. I seriously, I released it. I feel like I'm the only guy that likes Georgia. I'm like, everywhere I look, there's other pros. There's people that everybody loves Tennessee. I'm like, what am I missing here?
Yeah. And I didn't, can Aguilar pull it together and have a great game? Maybe, but I'm going to side with the guy who proves it year in, year out in this matchup, which would be Kirby Smart. He didn't blow teams out the first couple of weeks. That's what he does. He doesn't bring all the tool bags. Yeah, he never brings all the tools to the tool bag against the lesser teams. Yep. Doesn't show much. I think they're going to be able to handle this number, win by 10 points or more. I got a stat for you, Robert, when I was handicapping this game. And if you look back at the last 4 meetings, check out the second half scoring. Georgia 48-14 in those last 4 meetings combined. And that includes 28-0 the last 2 meetings in the second half. It's been 3 years since the Tennessee Volunteers have scored a second half point against the Georgia Bulldogs. So I'm with you, man. When that number dropped, you know what bummed me out? I should have made it a premium play and I didn't. And
that happens.
Yeah, and it was that close. And then I did my top 5 countdown. I threw it on as the top play on the countdown on the video. And I thought, boy, that's good enough to make a premium play. So I'm letting everybody know now my money is on Georgia, even if it's not a premium play.
Yeah, we talked about this before. Sometimes you got to play. Sometimes you play situations. Sometimes you play numbers. That's my thing. I'm like, look, if Tennessee pulls the upset, if they win this game, I'll tip my hat to them. Yeah. That's great. They've lost 8 straight by an average score of like 23.8 points per game. Right. Josh Heupel, big offensive mind. His teams have not scored more than 17 points in any game against them. So they kind of have to prove it to me. Yeah. Now, I absolutely went away from that exact philosophy with the Vanderbilt-South Carolina game, okay? The South Carolina's beaten Vanderbilt 16 straight years. They're 9-1 against the spread in the last 10. A lot of those were blowouts. I beat them 28-7 last week. But look, man, Diego Pavia is my boy. That's my homeboy. He just keeps covering spreads as an underdog. Thoughts on that? Same thing? Are we getting to that range where South Carolina needs to be the play? Because, look, if you got a number 11 ranked team in the country playing at home, laying a field goal against an unranked team, you got to pull the trigger.
Hey, man, you would think that. I think you got a camera above my desk or something that I got to check for in the vent because we're on the same side here too with Vandy. And again, that fell just short of making the premium card talking about Vanderbilt. I took 4.5 with them personally. And listen, you hit it on the head. Diego Pava, he's proven to be the real deal. 64 touchdown passes in 4 years of college football, including 25 touchdowns and only 5 picks in just over 1 season at Vanderbilt. His ability on the ground also, though, makes him so tough to defend. And last season, we saw Vandy knock off Alabama. They knocked off LSU. They were 23-point and 8-point dogs in those games. I had both of those teams. I went back at the start of this week and looked at where I had Alabama and LSU power rated at that point when Vandy played them compared to where I have South Carolina power rated at this point of the season. And I had both of those teams slightly better than where I have South Carolina right now. And Pavia and the Commodores handled both of those teams. So I think South Carolina is a bit overvalued. They escaped Vatech. I think they're laying too many points. At least I did when I jumped on Vandy at 4.5. So we're in agreement here again. I like Vanderbilt plus the points.
Yeah, for me, it's automatic. Vanderbilt, Pavia getting points. He's so dangerous, too, because this is a guy who has no illusions of, going to the NFL or anything like that. This is it. You are going to get his full effort every single game. Sure. I also agree with you on South Carolina. Looking at the top 25, there is no way in hell that South Carolina is the 11th best team in the country. Right. They're a good team. I like Lenora Sellers. I like the physicality that they play with. They were a very solid team. They are not the number 11 team in the country. Is there anybody, when you scan the college football landscape right now, that maybe you think is a little underrated or maybe you think is a little overrated? And how does that impact your handicapping?
I still think Oklahoma is a little bit overvalued. I really do. Not the defense. And, listen, I'm a minimalist early in the season as far as the amount of premium plays I have out there, at Docs. And I've had 7 since the week 1 Saturday. We've gone 4-3, which I'll take. But one of the losses of those 3 losses was Michigan. And that's one of those things where, as a bettor and a handicapper, I always go back in and see why I won and why I lost. And I kind of had to hit myself in the noggin after that game was final and go, what was I doing taking Michigan on the road against Venables, with a rookie quarterback, a freshman quarterback in Underwood? I should have left that game alone because I don't like Oklahoma enough to have played it. But at the same time, Venables' offenses have not been good since he's been there. We do know that. But he's a defensive mastermind. Mm-hmm. And I should have been thinking about that. So you got to look at those things. You make mistakes and you say, okay, well, that's never going to happen again. I got to look deeper into these things when Venables is a head coach and you got a young quarterback coming to town making his first road start. But I still think they're overvalued because I think of that, first of all, Underwood looked lost. He wasn't well coached for that game. Moore looked like he didn't have a clue at times on the opposite side of the football. And then you had Underwood also breaking down on the sideline and getting into shouting matches with his teammates as a young guy. And so, I look at Oklahoma and I thought, okay, defense is really good. No doubt about it. But I question that offense is going to put many points up on the scoreboard throughout the course of the SEC season. I did look into the Temple game. I think it's too many points for them to be laying, but I didn't make the move. I decided to keep that money in the wallet and wait for a better spot. But I think Temple, if you're going to play the game, I think that's the way I'd have to go.
Yeah, I went with Temple. I used it as my free play in the Docs newsletter. Just on spec, it's let down, look ahead, let down from the Michigan game. They have another SEC game. I think they play Auburn next week, which is the Jackson Arnold revenge game, something like that. And now they got to go on the road and play a Temple team that they beat 52-7 last year.
I did that with La Tech. I did that with La Tech last week against LSU. Same type of handicapping. I mean, they were laying 38 LSU in between the big win over Clemson and Florida up next.
1,000%.
Handicapping.
And listen, that's a perfect transition for us to the NFL, where we have teams like Oklahoma, where we maybe expect a letdown from. Going into the NFL this week, Baltimore and Buffalo, the takeaway from that game is kind of a Rorschach clock. You see what you want to see with it, okay? If you want to look at the Baltimore side and be like, look, if Derrick Henry doesn't fumble, they don't lose that game. We're not talking about the issues with Baltimore. If you want to look at Buffalo, you'd be like, look, this is why they're the Super Bowl favorite. They're going to roll the Jets like this. Do you see either one of those teams having some kind of lingering effects from what was really a dramatic game on Sunday Night Football?
I tell you what, first of all, I'm sitting there watching that Baltimore-Buffalo game like all of us, and I had Buffalo in the Circa and Westgate contest. Nice. And I'm sitting at the time, I'm 2-1. And, okay, I've already marked the L. There's 5 minutes before the game, but you kind of felt they were going to lose Buffalo long before the 5-minute mark of the fourth quarter. So I've already marked the L. I'm going, all right, I'm 2-2 after tonight. And then the fumble, as you mentioned. Derrick Henry was having a monster game. He opens the door wide open for Josh Allen magic. And the one place that Baltimore is susceptible this year is the secondary. And when they got that chance, Josh Allen was able to eat it up and spit Baltimore out and get the win. And of course, I'm feeling, wow, the gambling gods are on my side. These are the kind of wins you need in the $1 million contests to be able to win these things or make money and, end up in the top 25. And guess what I had on Monday? I had the Chicago Bears.
There you go.
Yeah. Right back.
The gambling gods giveth, the gambling gods taketh away. Yeah.
They're 17 up 17-6, and I'm watching JJ McCarthy do zilch for 3 quarters, and I'm going, all right, 4-1 card, good way to start the, so they take it away right after they give it to me.
Okay, takeaways from
that question real quick.
Oh yeah,
I like Baltimore. Believe it or not, I rarely lay doubles in the NFL. I did it this week, Robert.
Okay.
I laid the points with Baltimore. This team is so nasty. They hit you so damn hard. I can't even imagine having to suit up and play the next week. And I'm going to be tracking that early on, how teams do against the spread the week after playing Baltimore. We had kind of a situation like that a few years ago where you played against that team. And so I'm going to look for that. But I do like him this week, and I'll give you a quick analysis on it. Last week, Josh Allen was able to get out of trouble at times, and he loves to roll out and throw on the run. Can you imagine Joe Flacco trying to get away from this pass rush? I mean, listen, I love Joe Flacco, but, you and I probably can beat him in the 40. Well, maybe you. But anyway, the bottom line is they're going to get after him, and he's a statue. And their defense is good, Cleveland, but I think they're going to wear down over the course of this game.
Yeah. Okay. So my thing with Baltimore is I don't like to mess with them at home. Okay. Over the last 15 years, I think home field advantage is a little overrated and overvalued in the NFL. But over the last 15 years, there's 3 teams that when they're running hot, I don't like to bet against. That's Baltimore at home, New Orleans when Drew Brees was there. That was a real home field advantage, in Seattle when Russell Wilson and them were there. Those were the 3 best home field advantages I've seen. I feel like Baltimore is still kind of in the middle of it. That's why I didn't use Cleveland in this one, even though I do think it's a few too many points. But what are your thoughts on Buffalo, though? Like, you win a game like that you absolutely had no business winning. Yeah. Now you're same thing. You're on the road, division rival. The Jets looked a little spry last week. I said Justin Fields looked as good as any quarterback that I watched last week. Whether that's sustainable is another question, but is Buffalo in a little bit of a trouble? And should they be laying that many points?
Yeah, all of a sudden you're talking about, Fields with the Jets was resembling Jaden Daniels last year at times. And I thought he, had his best game as a pro from what I can remember watching since he's been in the league, short career thus far. But what I liked about the Jets in that game that I think can carry over here, first of all, we're going to see how Buffalo is as far as, getting knocked all over the place by Baltimore. And again, I'm not talking about, like Baltimore blew them out, but they did own the game for a good chunk of it. And they're just beating you up in the trenches. So I want to see how Buffalo reacts. But the Bills' run defense got shredded. And we saw Breece Hall and the Jets' new-look offense run well. Yep. They were 31st in the league last year in rushing yards per game, about 90 yards per contest. They had 180-plus in this game last week against a defensive-minded football team. So because of that, I think, I got to lean on the Jets. I didn't play them. I might play them. But I have yet to do it. But if I play anything at all in this game, be the Jets. And I think there's going to be maybe some leftover effects of getting smacked in the chops by Baltimore when it comes to the Buffalo Bills up front and in the trenches.
All right, last question, and then I'm going to let you get out of here. But, week 2 in the NFL is overreaction week, right? I joked about it before. Everybody that won last week, they're going 17-0 and going to the Super Bowl. Everybody that lost last week, they're terrible, fire the head coach. Was there any listening to that scuttlebutt this week, whether through the media or through the people that you talk to in our industry? Is there any overreaction that the public had to last week's games that you're looking to take advantage of this week?
Yeah, I would think one of the games that jumps out at me would be the Rams and the Titans this week. And Tennessee played well, could have won the game, lost by 8 at Denver, covered the spread for everybody for the most part. But Denver, Bo Nix played about as bad as he has in his first season plus now in the NFL. And I thought their play calling on offense wasn't great. Tennessee's got a good defense. There's no doubt about it. But I think there's an overreaction when I hear a lot of people jumping on the Titans this week. And I don't knock anybody's plays. I really don't, Robert. It's like you've got your way of handicapping, I've got mine, and you stick with what's good for you. And over the course of the season, maybe we all hit 55% or better. But the bottom line is when I look at Tennessee, I don't think they have the offense. the Rams have the nasty, nasty defense. We saw it again last week. And I think the overreaction is that the Rams only scored 14 points. At least from some of the guys I'm hearing in Vegas, they're overreacting. And I'm like, listen, this offense is solid. They went up against one of the best pass rush teams in all of the NFL last week.
Houston's defense is excellent.
But that offensive line is so damn good. They gave up like the 6th fewest sacks in the league last year, the Rams. And I don't think Tennessee is going to get to Stafford in this one. And then you got the new additions at wide receiver. I think this is a game where the Rams are able to bust out a little bit, win by margin, cover that number, which is going against a lot of the guys in Vegas right now, Robert.
Yeah, I'm kicking myself now hearing you say that, because those were all the thoughts that were going through my head this week. Same thing. I was like, why am I the only guy that likes the Rams? Like, I get it. They're coming east. I know you don't like that handicapping, all this stuff, but I'm like, I think the Titans stink. I think they're still a bad team, and the Rams are, if nothing, they're efficient on both sides.
Let me give you a stat, because it's not necessarily a Western team on the Eastern time zone, because Nashville is Central. But moving forward, I've been talking about this for a few years now on radio and TV, and we went back, and people who are new to this, they hear it a lot, but they might not know this. As far as West Coast team on the Eastern time zone is really a myth, and we went back 30 years in the NFL. We did this a couple years ago and saw that the West Coast team covers the spread over 54% of the time on the Eastern time zone. Now, if you get 2 straight weeks, back-to-back weeks where that West Coast team's in the Eastern time zone, it was 70% against the number. Now, there were far fewer opportunities, maybe 85 or 90, that second week in a row on the East Coast, Eastern time zone, but they covered almost 70% of the time. And again, when it's the first week, it's like 54%, 30 years running. So this doesn't qualify as one of those plays anyway, as you mentioned, because
that's what I saw some people talking about. They're like,
I agree.
Spot for the Rams, they got to come all this.
And you hear that a lot, and I'm like,
what am I?
Throw that out of the mix.
Right? How might I see this? All right, where's your top play this weekend, college or pro?
I got one 7-star in college and a 6-star in the NFL. The 7-star in college goes at 7:30 p.m. Eastern time, and the 6-star in the NFL Sunday Night Football, Falcons and Vikings. That's the game we're looking at there. So.
Awesome. Thank you very much for taking some of your time. Scott Spritzer, he will be back as we do this throughout the season every Thursday. Doc's Football Release Party. Good luck to you this weekend, Scott.
Always enjoy working with you, Robert. Kick some butt this weekend.
Thanks, you as well. And again, thank you to everyone that hung in here. Hopefully you found this informative. If so, like and subscribe to the Doc Sports YouTube channel. Also, don't forget, this is one of the last weekends. We got our early bird specials for full season college football packages still available for $749. If you use that free 60 below, you get that price under $700. Also, our 3-for-1. So if you sign up for Scott Spreitzer's full seasons package, you can pick 2 other guys. Let's say Arun Shiva and Jason Sharp. And you can test drive all 3 of them for 2 or 3 weeks and pick which one you want to ride out with for the rest of the season. Don't forget, I have my 8-unit NFL Game of the Year going this weekend. Like I said, I've never done this before in my 20 years at Docs. I've never had a game this early for this big of a bet. But sometimes you got to say screw it, right? Like, I'm going for it. I like this spot. I'm not going to pull any punches. So look for that on Sunday. Other than that, we'll be back next Thursday. Tomorrow, Docs Daily, 1 o'clock. What are the odds at 2 o'clock? Yeah, that's it. It's time for me to start drinking heavily and watch this Thursday night game. Carpe diem and good luck.
Well, yeah. Robert has the Game of the Year 8-unit. He won't tell you. I will. Good luck unless you're against this. If you didn't hit the like button, you can't win none of your bets. See you next week.